You think the vows are the biggest part of a wedding. But it's not. It's the night before, when every doubt, every secret, every truth still has time to surface. And sometimes, it does. The night before your wedding, you expect nerves. You expect cold feet, some shaky hands, maybe a toast or two that goes a little off the rails. You expect to lie in bed thinking about seating charts, forgetting whether you packed the cufflinks, wondering if Aunt Marie's gonna start another wine-fueled argument at the reception. But you don't expect to have your entire relationship rewritten in 30 minutes. Not the night before. Not after 3 years of building something real. Her name was Claire. And if you'd asked me that morning, wedding rehearsal, suits pressed, photographers buzzing around like happy bees, I would have told you I was the luckiest man alive. She looked like a woman who couldn't wait to say, "I do." I remember catching her laughing during the rehearsal dinner, hand on my shoulder, face glowing under string lights, whispering things like, "Can you believe this is really happening?" But underneath that smile, there was something else. And I missed it. God help me, I missed it. That night, just before midnight, she knocked on my hotel room door. Now, we'd already agreed not to see each other before the ceremony. Superstition, tradition, whatever. But I knew from the look on her face this wasn't about nerves or last-minute logistics. She was pale. Not dramatic movie scene pale. But pale like someone who hadn't slept. Pale like the weight on her chest had just gotten too heavy. I let her in. She sat on the edge of the bed like she didn't know if she should stay. And then she said the 5 words that turned my stomach inside out. "I need to tell you something." I didn't say a word. Just nodded, slowly, like I was bracing for a thunderstorm that hadn't yet broken open. She started talking fast. Said she went to Vegas with her best friends 6 weeks ago, bachelorette weekend, planned months ago, nothing unusual. I knew about the trip. I saw the Instagram posts, flashy hotel rooms, bottomless brunches, matching silk robes with "Bride Tribe" across the back. What I didn't know was what didn't make the feed. I didn't plan for it to happen, she said. It was the second night. Everyone had gone to bed. I stayed out. I shouldn't have. I drank too much. Way too much. She was shaking. I think she wanted to cry but knew better. Knew that would look too much like a plea for sympathy. Knew that wouldn't play right. I asked her, gently, what happened. And she said it. I kissed someone. But it didn't stop there. She didn't say she told him no. She didn't say she left the bar. She didn't say she came back to the room early and threw up regret. She said she went with him. To his hotel. And that's when the words started to feel like ash in my mouth. I didn't sleep with him, she said. But I stayed in his room. All night. I asked her why she was telling me now. Why the night before? And her answer? I didn't want to start our marriage with a lie. I thought I could live with it, but I can't. I needed you to know. I looked at her. This woman I'd planned a life with. This woman whose hand I was supposed to hold at the altar in less than 12 hours. I didn't yell. Didn't accuse. I just felt empty. Because she didn't wait until that night to tell me because she was brave. She waited because the guilt had finally outrun her pride. She wanted forgiveness, yes, but she also wanted the wedding to go on. She wanted to confess, wipe it clean, and move forward like nothing had ever really happened. But the truth? Something had happened. And it changed everything. She sat there, waiting for my answer. But I didn't have one. Not yet. Because sometimes, betrayal doesn't break you all at once. Sometimes it starts with a whisper in the dark and ends in silence. And the worst part? We were still holding hands. There's the lie you hear, and then there's the one they leave out, the truth they hope you never go looking for. But if you've ever been lied to by someone you love, you know, the silence is always louder than the words. We sat in that hotel room a long time. Claire's hands never stopped moving, ringing, twitching, fidgeting with the little chain bracelet she always wore. She just told me she spent the night in another man's hotel room. And yet, somehow, she still looked at me like we could salvage it. Like all this, the ceremony, the guests, the plans, could still hold. I didn't sleep with him, she kept saying, as if repeating that part over and over again would create a line I could forgive her on. Nothing happened beyond the kiss. I swear, Adam. But here's the thing. She waited to tell me. Waited until the tux was pressed. Until her dress was hanging in the bridal suite. Until the venue had been paid in full and the wine had been delivered and her mother had flown in from 3 states away. She didn't confess when she got back from Vegas. Not a week later. Not a month later. Not even when we were writing our vows. She waited until the last possible moment. Not to be honest, but to minimize the consequences. And that changes everything. Still, something didn't sit right with me. I just stayed in his room. That line. It looped in my mind like static. Because if that was all it was, if it had been a mistake she regretted, a stupid drunken decision, why stay? Why climb into someone else's bed, even if nothing happened, and not come back? So I asked. Why didn't you leave? Claire looked at me like I'd asked her to describe the color of guilt. I don't know, she said. I panicked. I didn't want to walk through the hotel alone. I thought, if I just slept it off, no one would ever know. That wasn't an answer. That was a justification. And that's when I started thinking about something else. Something small. I remembered the group photo from their first night in Vegas, Claire and her friends on a rooftop bar. There were 5 of them in total. I'd liked the picture when she posted it. Even commented something corny like, "Lucky guy smirking face." I remembered one of her bridesmaids, Nicole, tagging the location. Same hotel. Same bar. Which meant Claire wasn't alone. So I did what no groom should have to do at midnight before his wedding. I called Nicole. She didn't answer the first time. Or the second. But the third time, she picked up. Adam? Her voice was groggy. I need to ask you something, I said, calm, quiet. And I need the truth. She hesitated. What's going on? Claire told me about Vegas. Silence. She said she kissed someone. Said she stayed in his room. Said nothing else happened. Nicole didn't speak for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was different. Flat. Careful. Adam, I didn't know she was going to tell you. Tell me what, exactly? She didn't come back to our room until morning. We thought she was with her cousin. That's what she told us. That hit me like a sucker punch. So she lied to you, too. Nicole sighed. Look, I don't know the whole story. But I do know, she came back wearing the same dress from the night before. No shoes. And she looked like hell. That's all I needed to hear. When I hung up, Claire was still sitting there. Eyes red. Silent now. I didn't say anything. Just stood and walked to the window. Looked down at the parking lot lights, glowing dim beneath the early moon. I felt something in my chest, deep, quiet, final. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Just clarity. She hadn't just kissed someone. She hadn't just made a mistake. She'd come back, lied to her friends, smiled at me across breakfasts, helped pick out centerpieces and cake flavors, and wrote the words forever in a vow she still planned to read aloud. And now, here we were. I turned back to her. I need to know everything, Claire. No filters. No half-truths. If you want me to marry you tomorrow, you tell me everything tonight. Her lip trembled. And then, finally, she said something I'll never forget. It wasn't just a kiss. There's a difference between being hurt and being humiliated. One breaks your heart. The other breaks who you thought you were in the story. She said it quietly, but the words hit like thunder. It wasn't just a kiss. I stood there, hands on my hips, jaw tight, waiting for her to keep going, but it was like she couldn't find her way through the next sentence. Maybe because she knew that whatever was left to say was going to torch everything we hadn't already burned down. I sat on the edge of the desk. Not beside her. Not across. Just, separate. Waiting. And finally, the rest came out. They met at the hotel bar. He was older, maybe mid-30s, wearing a sports coat and a wedding ring he later slipped off. He bought her a drink. She accepted. Then another. She said she felt untouchable that night. That's the word she used. Untouchable. She said it felt like being in a movie. Like for a moment, she wasn't Claire, the girl who color-coded wedding planners and sent thank you notes. She was just someone a stranger wanted. And she wanted to be wanted. I didn't interrupt. I didn't say a word. She told me she followed him to the elevator. Said her friends had already gone upstairs and she didn't want the night to end. That's the line that really got me. I didn't want the night to end. Not when she was 6 weeks from our wedding. Not when the ring was already on her finger. Not when I was back home building bookshelves in the room we were calling the nursery, just in case. She said they went back to his room. That they sat at the edge of the bed, talking, flirting. That when he kissed her again, she didn't pull away. She kept saying she was drunk. But when someone remembers every detail, that excuse doesn't hold. I didn't sleep with him, she repeated. But then, softer, but I let it go too far. That phrase. That gray zone she kept trying to paint. So I asked. What does that mean, Claire? Too far. She flinched. And then she told me. Clothes off. Heavy touching. Not sex, but everything but. She said she stopped before it crossed that line. Said she sobered up and panicked and curled up on the couch in his room until morning. She made it sound like restraint. Like I should feel grateful that she didn't go all the way. But betrayal doesn't care where the clothes stopped coming off. Betrayal happens the second you let someone else in the space where trust should be. The room felt cold. I stood and walked across to the minibar. Poured myself a glass of water I didn't want. Just needed something to hold. She sat there crying now. Quietly. Tears she hadn't shed the night it happened. The month it passed. All those mornings we drank coffee together while I kissed her forehead and said things like, "We're almost there." The truth is, she wasn't telling me because she was brave. She was telling me because she had to. Because the guilt had become bigger than her love. I asked her one last question. Would you have ever told me, if I didn't ask? She didn't answer. And that silence. That was my answer. Because the thing no one tells you is, cheating doesn't always end the relationship, it just ends the version of it you thought was real. And sitting in that room, staring at the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, I realized. My wedding was tomorrow. But my marriage had already died in Vegas. There's a moment, right before the sun comes up, where everything feels still, like the world is holding its breath. That's where I found myself. Not angry. Not broken. Just, deciding. I didn't sleep. She stayed in the room, curled on the corner of the bed, still in her dress from the rehearsal dinner. I sat in the armchair by the window and watched the skyline go from deep blue to orange. And I realized something I wasn't prepared for. I wasn't shattered. I was done. And there's a quiet power in that. I wasn't dreaming of fixing it. I wasn't asking myself what I did wrong. I wasn't waiting for some last-minute explanation that would reframe everything. I was just staring at the end of something I thought would last forever, and realizing I could breathe through it. At around 6 a.m., she stood up. Her makeup was smudged. Her voice raw. "I'll call it off," she said. "If that's what you want. I'll tell everyone it was my fault." I nodded. Because yes. That's what I wanted. And no, I didn't need her to take the fall publicly. I didn't need revenge or some public spectacle to make me feel better. I just needed out. I told her I'd handle my side of the calls. She should talk to her family, her bridesmaids, her friends. She should own her part, because that's what adults do when they break something important. She didn't argue. She didn't beg. And maybe that was the most painful part. That she wasn't fighting for it anymore. Because deep down, I think she knew, she hadn't just broken the trust. She'd buried it. I walked to the closet, took my suit off the hanger, and put it gently back into its bag. I had loved her. Truly. With every ounce of good I had. I built a future around her, filled it with plans and porch swings and names for kids we hadn't met yet. But love isn't a force strong enough to pull someone out of a decision they already made. And Claire had made hers the moment she followed him to that hotel room. The wedding planner called me at 7:12 a.m. I told her there wouldn't be a ceremony. No, I wouldn't be rescheduling. No, I didn't want refunds, just confirmations that everything was off. The florist, the venue, the DJ, the bakery, one by one, they responded. Some with sympathy. Some with confusion. One woman actually cried on the phone, said she'd never seen something fall apart this close to "I do." I told her I'd lived through worse. But that wasn't true. I hadn't. This was the worst. But I wasn't falling apart. Later that morning, I called my parents. Told them everything. My mom cried. My dad didn't say much, just asked if I needed him to come get me. I said no. I needed to sit in it. Alone. Then I made one more call. Derek. The guy who's been through every season of my life, high school, heartbreak, late-night beers and early morning moving trucks. He picked up on the first ring. I didn't even have to explain. He just said, "You need coffee or whiskey?" I laughed. Both. 20 minutes later, he was at my door. We sat on the hotel balcony, feet up, drinks in hand, watching the world move on like it didn't just cave in on mine. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I said. "But I will be." And that was the truth. Because that morning taught me something I didn't know I had in me. The ability to let go of something, even if I loved it. Especially if it stopped loving me the way I deserved. A wedding is supposed to be a beginning. But sometimes, it's just the final scene of a story that already ended, and no one bothered to read the last chapter. Word got out faster than I expected. You cancel a wedding 12 hours before the ceremony and people start whispering before the chairs even get stacked. The venue coordinator had barely hung up with me before texts started rolling in, first from friends, then cousins, then people I hadn't spoken to in years who somehow found out through someone's FY group chat. Most people didn't ask what happened. They just offered what you offer in moments like this. Let me know if you need anything. I can't imagine what you're going through. You're better off finding out now than later. I appreciated it. I did. But grief doesn't have room for comfort right away, it just needs space. Claire stayed in the bridal suite. Her friends circled her like satellite moons, none brave enough to text me, none bold enough to ask for details. They didn't have to. She told them. I don't know how much of the story she gave them. Maybe the edited version. Maybe the truth. Maybe just tears and half sentences. I didn't ask. Instead, I went back to the venue alone. Not for drama. Not to make a scene. Just, for closure. The decorations were still there. White roses draped over the arch, rows of chairs perfectly aligned. The aisle was empty, the sun pouring through the windows like nothing had changed. And maybe for everyone else, it hadn't yet. But for me, everything was different. I stood in the middle of the aisle, looking at where I was supposed to be standing that day, where I was supposed to see her in that dress, where I was supposed to say forever. Instead, I took off my ring. Not the wedding band, we hadn't gotten there. But the one I'd worn on my right hand since our engagement. A simple band with a brushed finish, something she'd picked out for me the day we found hers. I left it on the altar. That was my goodbye. Not in anger. But in finality. On my way out, I saw the rehearsal dinner seating chart, still pinned to the wall near the kitchen entrance. A Sharpie list of names and tables, scribbled notes about speeches and toasts. I was supposed to give one. Now, I was giving myself permission to leave. I walked outside to find Derek's car already waiting. He didn't say a word. Just popped the passenger door open and handed me a bag from the barbecue place we used to hit in college. Pulled pork sandwich, extra sauce, and a 6-pack of the same local brew we used to drink on the porch when life felt too big to hold. We drove to the overlook just outside town, the one where we used to go when we needed answers, or maybe just silence. And we sat. Ate. Drank. Laughed, eventually. Think she regrets it? Derek asked after a long pause. I shrugged. I think she regrets getting caught. He nodded slowly. You still love her? That took longer to answer. I love the version of her I thought was real, I said. But I don't know who that woman is anymore. And that was the truth. I wasn't mourning the loss of a partner. I was mourning the loss of a promise. A future built on trust one didn't realize was hollow. That night, I turned my phone off. I let the world wonder, let the texts pile up, let the story spin without me. Because I was done being the guy trying to fix something that wasn't mine to hold together anymore. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a man left behind. I felt like a man walking away on his own 2 feet. The hardest part isn't letting go of what hurt you, it's letting go of the version of yourself that believed that was love. 3 weeks passed. People stopped texting. Calls slowed down. The social media curiosity faded. It's funny how quick the world moves on when it's not their life that collapsed. But I was still here, in the quiet after the storm, standing in the debris of what was supposed to be my forever. Claire never reached out again. Not after the wedding day, not after the silence that followed. No apology text. No letter. No closure coffee meetup. I think she knew, when I took off that ring and walked away, that it was done. And maybe that's the best thing she did in the end, she didn't try to hold on. Because I wouldn't have let her. I moved in with Derek for a bit. His couch became home base, beer in the fridge, throw blanket that never stayed on the backrest, football games we only half watched. We didn't talk about Claire much. Didn't need to. Sometimes healing doesn't sound like heart-to-hearts. Sometimes it sounds like two friends sitting in silence, letting the weight of it all settle between them like dust that no longer needs sweeping. Then one day, I woke up and realized I didn't feel heavy anymore. I wasn't waking up hoping things were different. I wasn't holding my breath waiting for answers that wouldn't come. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't broken. I was just clear. I started jogging again. Started eating better. Got serious about work. Picked up a side project restoring a beat-up motorcycle I'd been putting off for years. The grease, the tools, the progress, it was all therapy without the couch. I made new playlists. Deleted the old ones. Stopped saying her name in my head when songs came on. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I felt something I hadn't in a long time, myself. The me I was before we got lost in timelines, seating charts, and champagne flutes. The me who didn't make room for someone else's guilt. And that version of me? He didn't need a wedding to feel whole. A couple months later, I got an invitation in the mail from an old friend, college buddy getting married out in Oregon. I almost didn't go. But something about the open space, the clean start, the distance from everything I'd left behind, it called to me. So I went. No expectations. No baggage. Just a packed duffel and a window seat. The wedding was beautiful, sunset over the mountains, laughter that reached the treetops, a couple so in love it didn't feel like a performance. It wasn't fancy, but it was real. And there, in the middle of it all, I met someone. Not like that, not a movie ending. Just a girl in a green dress who smiled like she didn't expect anything from me. We talked. About books. About music. About dogs and car problems and why certain people never learn to load a dishwasher the right way. It was easy. It was light. And it reminded me that endings don't cancel out beginnings. They just make space. I didn't know what would come of it. Still don't. But it didn't matter. Because standing there, drink in hand, laughter in the air, music in the background, I wasn't thinking about Vegas. I wasn't thinking about the altar I never walked to. I wasn't thinking about the ring I left behind. I was thinking about now. About how sometimes, the life you planned isn't the life you need. And how peace doesn't always look like a white dress and a first dance. Sometimes, it looks like finally being free. To choose better. To be better. And to walk into your future without looking over your shoulder.